This is Rain reading The Phantom Tollbooth, and here is Chapter 6, Faintly Macabre Story. Once upon a time, this land was a barren and frightening wilderness, whose high rocky mountains sheltered the evil winds, and whose barren valleys offered hospitality to no man. Few things grew, and those that did were bent and twisted, and their fruit was as bitter as wormwood. What wasn't waste was desert, and what wasn't desert was rock, and the demons of darkness made their home in the hills. Evil creatures roamed at will through the countryside and down to the sea. It was known as the land of Null. Then one day, a small ship appeared on the Sea of Knowledge. It carried a young prince seeking the future. In the name of goodness and truth, he laid claim to all the country and set out to explore his domain. The demons, monsters, and giants were furious at his presumption and banded together to drive him out. The earth shook with their battle. And when they finished, all that remained to the prince was a small piece of land at the end of the sea. "I'll build my city here," he declared, and that was what he did. Before long, more ships came bearing settlers for the new land, and the city grew and pushed its boundaries further and further out. Each day it was attacked anew, but nothing could destroy the prince's new city. And grow it did. Soon it was no longer just a city, it was a kingdom, and it was called the Kingdom of Wisdom. But outside the walls, all was not safe, and this new king vowed to conquer the land that was rightfully his. Brief pause now to comment that this is a slightly old-fashioned book and has slightly old-fashioned views of colonialism, and so perhaps we should not take this section at exact word value. Just a warning. Sorry for political commentary, but it's a little pro-colonialism, and we're not a huge fan of that ideal. Anyway, resuming. But outside the walls, all was not safe, and the new king vowed to conquer the land that was rightfully his. Each spring he set forth with his army, and each autumn he returned, and year by year the kingdom grew larger and more prosperous. The land and the prince. He took himself a wife, and before long had 2 fine sons to whom he taught everything he knew, so that one day they might rule wisely. When the boys grew to manhood, the king called to them and said, "I am becoming an old man and can no longer go forth to battle. You must take my place and found new cities in the wilderness, for the kingdom of wisdom must grow." And so they did. One went south to the foothills of confusion and built Dictionopolis, the city of words. One went north to the mountains of ignorance and built Digitopolis, the city of numbers. Both cities flourished mightily, and the demons were driven back still farther. Soon other cities and towns were founded in the new lands, and at last only the farthest reaches of the wilderness remained to the terrible creatures. And there they waited, ready to strike down all who ventured near or relaxed their guard. Brief fun map. There's the Tollbooth. This is the old city of wisdom where the king first started his conquering. Down here we have Dictionopolis, and up here we have the evil mountains, and over there is Digitopolis, the city of numbers. A bunch of other fun stuff and cities. Island of conclusions. Anyway, so far we have come whee, and down. Okay. back to the story. The two brothers were glad, however, to go their separate ways, for they were by nature very suspicious and jealous. Each one tried to outdo the other, and they worked so hard and diligently at it that before long their cities rivaled even Wisdom in size and grandeur. Words are more important than wisdom, said one privately. Numbers are more important than wisdom, thought the other to himself. And they grew to dislike each other more and more. The old king, however, knew nothing of his son's animosity, and was very happy in the twilight of his reign, and spent his days quietly walking and contemplating in the royal gardens. His only regret was that he had never had a daughter, for he loved little girls as much as he loved little boys. One day he was strolling peacefully about the grounds when he discovered two tiny babies that had been abandoned in a basket under the grape arbor. They were beautiful golden-haired girls. The king was overjoyed. They have been sent to crown my old age, he cried, and called the queen, his ministers, the palace staff, and indeed the entire population to see them. We shall call this one Rhyme and this one Reason. And so they became the princesses of sweet rhyme and pure reason, and were brought up by the palace. When the old king finally died, the kingdom was divided between his two sons, with the provision that they would be equally responsible for the welfare of the young princesses. One son went south and became Azaz the Unabridged, king of Dictionopolis. The other went north and became the mathematician, ruler of Digitopolis. In truth of their word, they both provided well for the little girls, who continued to live in wisdom. Everyone loved the princesses because of their great beauty, their gentle ways, and their ability to settle all controversies fairly and reasonably. People with problems, or grievances, or arguments came from all over the land to seek advice, and even the two brothers, who by this time were fighting continuously, often called on them to help decide matters of state. It was said by everyone that rhyme and reason answer all problems. Princess of sweet rhyme and pure reason. As the years passed, the brothers grew farther and farther apart, and their separate kingdoms became grander and richer. Their disputes, however, became more and more difficult to reconcile. But always, with patience and love, the princesses set things right. Then one day they had the most terrible quarrel of all. King Azaz insisted that words were far more significant than numbers, and hence his kingdom was truly the greater. And the mathematician claimed that numbers were much more important than words, and hence his kingdom was supreme. They discussed and debated and raved and ranted until they were on the verge of blows, and it was decided to submit the question to arbitration by the princesses. After days of careful consideration, in which all the evidence was weighed and all the witnesses heard, they made their decision. Words and numbers are of equal value, for in the cloak of knowledge, one is warp and the other woof. It is no more important to count the sands than it is to name the stars. Therefore, let both kingdoms live in peace. Everyone was pleased with the verdict. Everyone, that is, but the brothers, who were besides themselves with anger. What good are these girls if they cannot settle an argument in someone's favor, they growled, since both were more interested in their own advantage than the truth. We'll banish them from the kingdom forever." And so they were taken from the palace and sent far away to the castle in the air, and they have not been seen or heard from since. And that is why today, in this land, there is neither rhyme nor reason. "And what happened to the two rulers?" asked Milo. "Banishing the princesses was the last thing they ever agreed on, and they soon fell to warring with each other. Despite this, their own kingdoms have continued to prosper, but the old city of wisdom has fallen into great disrepair, and there is no one to set it right. So you see, until the princesses return, I shall have to stay here." "Maybe we can rescue them," said Milo, when he saw how sad the witch looked. "Oh, that would be difficult," she replied. "The kingdom in the air is far from here, and the one staircase that leads to it is guarded by fierce and black-hearted demons." Talk growled ominously, for he hated even the idea of demons. "I'm afraid there's not much at all a little boy and his dog can do," she said. "But never you mind, it's not so bad. I've grown quite used to it here. But you must be going, or you'll waste the whole day." "Oh, we're here for 6 million years," sighed Milo, "and I don't see any way to escape." "Nonsense," scolded the witch. "You mustn't take Officer Shrift so seriously. He loves putting people in prison, but he doesn't care about keeping them there. Now just push the button in the wall and be on your way." Milo pushed the button and a door swung open, letting in a shaft of brilliant sunshine. "Goodbye, come again," shouted the witch as they stepped outside and the door slammed shut. Milo and Talk stood blinking in the bright light, and as their eyes became accustomed to it, the first things they saw were the king's advisors again, rushing towards them. "Ah, there you are. Where have you been? We've been looking all over for you. The royal banquet is about to begin. Come with us." They seemed very agitated, out of breath, and as Milo walked along beside them. "But what about my car?" he asked. "Don't need it. No use for it. Superfluous. Unnecessary. Uncalled for. We'll take our vehicle. Conveyance, rig, carbonk, chariot, buggy, coach, brougham, chanderon," they repeated in order, and pointed to a small wooden wagon. "Oh dear, all those words again," thought Milo, as he climbed into a wagon with Talk and the cabinet matters. "How are you going to make it move? It doesn't have a—" "Be very quiet," advised the Duke, "for it goes without saying." And sure enough, as soon as they were all still, it began to move quickly through the streets, and in a very short time they arrived at the royal palace. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me, and I will be reading again next week.